All right, let's dive into the world of high-tech polymers. We're going to be talking XPro India Limited.
They're quietly making waves.
In a market you probably haven't given much thought to.
Specialized plastic films.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating about XPro is they're the top dog in India
Yeah?
for these films that are essential
Essential for
things like capacitors in electronics.
Yeah.
And get this.
Yeah.
They're not just content with dominating the Indian market.
Right.
They're setting their sights on global players
Really?
from Japan, Korea, even Europe.
Wow, ambitious.
Yeah.
We've got their Q4 and full year results for fiscal year 2023-24 hot off the press, including the juicy details straight from their earnings call transcript. Think of this as your all-access pass to understanding how XPro is playing the high-stakes game of high-performance plastics.
Absolutely.
Ready to decode their performance.
Let's break it down.
Okay.
First, the revenue for Q4 came in at INR 128.41 crore.
Okay.
That's a slight uptick compared to the same quarter last year.
All right.
But here's where it gets interesting. Their production volume actually jumped by almost 20%.
So even though revenue growth was modest,
Seems like they're trying to stay ahead of a surge in demand.
they're churning out product like crazy. Makes you wonder what's causing that lag between production and sales.
They did mention some shipping delays,
Okay.
which kept some finished goods from being counted as revenue in Q4.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out in the coming quarters. Now, on the profitability front, their EBITDA margin for Q4 dipped a bit to 13% compared to 15% last year.
Okay. So a little dip in profitability. What's the culprit there?
It seems the culprit is a shift in their product mix.
Okay.
Their dielectric film segment,
Yeah.
which is their high-margin specialty, actually saw a lower share of total revenue this quarter.
Interesting. So the types of films they're selling are impacting their bottom line.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if they're prioritizing volume over those high-margin products. Let's zoom out and look at the full year picture for fiscal year 2023-24. How did they fare overall?
Well, for the full year, revenue actually decreased
Decreased.
by 8.9%, ending up at INR 465.41 crore.
Okay.
But don't hit the panic button just yet.
Right.
There are a few things at play here.
Okay. I'm all ears. Unpack those nuances for us.
First, lower polymer prices had an impact,
Right.
which isn't surprising given the global economic climate.
Right.
They also stopped doing something called toll manufacturing.
Okay.
At a facility they sold off.
Right.
Plus, remember those Red Sea strikes?
Oh, yeah. The Red Sea saga.
They caused some export delays that hit their reported sales.
Always something shaking things up.
It's
isn't it? So despite these revenue swings, they managed to hold the line on profitability.
They did.
Okay.
Their EBITDA margin for the full year landed at 14.2%.
Yeah.
That's pretty close to the 14.5% they achieved in the previous fiscal year.
Okay.
They attribute this to a laser focus on controlling costs and squeezing more efficiency out of their operations.
Makes sense. They're battling external forces by tightening their belts internally. Smart move.
Hmm.
Now, I'm curious about these two main segments they operate in.
Okay.
Dielectric films, their high-margin specialty, and co-extruded sheets and films, which sounds like their bread and butter product line. Can you give us the lowdown on how each segment performed this year?
Absolutely. Let's start with the star of the show, dielectric films.
Okay.
They brought in INR 145.89 crore in revenue.
All right.
Surprisingly, this was actually down from the previous year.
Down, but I thought demand was soaring.
Here's the catch.
Yeah.
They had to prioritize domestic demand, which meant scaling back exports because they're running at max capacity. This is where their new production line comes into play.
Right.
Remember, they're aiming to double their capacity.
Yeah.
They're playing the long game.
It's like they're holding back a tidal wave of product. Okay, what about the co-extruded sheets and films? Did that segment pick up the slack?
It did indeed.
Okay.
This segment pulled in a hefty INR 311 crore, a significant chunk of their total revenue. It seems to be the workhorse of the business.
So while their specialty segment is facing growing pains, their core business is chugging along nicely. What's fueling that growth in their co-extruded segment?
The transcript points to robust demand
Okay.
for consumer durables in India,
Okay.
particularly refrigerators.
Uh-huh.
Think about those specialized plastic sheets lining your fridge.
Yeah.
XPro supplies a lot of major brands.
So every time I grab a cold drink, I should be thanking XPro.
Yeah.
But strong demand often attracts competition.
Right, exactly. And they did mention facing fierce competition in this segment,
Okay.
which put the squeeze on their pricing.
Right.
It's a delicate dance between protecting their margins and staying competitive in a market that's hungry for their product.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope.
Right?
What about their expenses? Any red flags popping up there?
While they didn't go into detail on specific expense categories in the earnings call,
Right.
they did hammer home their commitment to cost control and boosting productivity.
Yeah.
It's like they're obsessed with operational efficiency. They also highlighted efforts to reduce debt, which caught my attention.
Oh, debt reduction is always a good sign. Tell me more.
They actually managed to completely pay off their outstanding term loans for existing operations this fiscal year.
Wow, impressive.
This, of course, led to lower interest expenses,
Right.
which helped bolster their bottom line.
That's a smart move, especially with all these big investments they're making in new production capacity. They're clearly thinking long-term.
Absolutely. They seem to understand that managing debt is crucial for sustainable growth. It's a sign of financial discipline, which is always reassuring for investors.
Now let's gaze into the crystal ball. What's XPro's outlook for the future? Are they feeling optimistic?
They're definitely striking a confident chord.
Good.
They anticipate strong demand
Okay.
for their products both in India and internationally.
That's great.
They see big opportunities,
The big opportunity.
electric vehicles and alternative energy, which are hot sectors globally.
So they're not just riding the wave. They're trying to catch the biggest swells out there. Are they banking on these trends just taking off naturally?
It seems like they're not leaving it to chance.
Okay.
They believe their specialized films are a perfect fit for these applications
Right.
and are actively developing new products to meet those specific needs.
Oh, wow.
They're playing offense, not defense.
I like their proactive approach.
Yeah.
So they're innovating, expanding, and riding these mega trends. But every hero's journey has its obstacles. What risks are they flagging for investors?
Competition naturally is a major factor.
Right.
They're facing heat from both local and global players.
Sure.
They also acknowledge that the plastics market can be cyclical,
Yeah.
with ups and downs influenced by external factors. And then there's the ever-present risk of supply chain disruptions.
Of course. Something we've all become acutely aware of in recent years.
Exactly.
Right? No business is an island. They're part of a complex ecosystem.
Yeah.
But all things considered, they seem pretty bullish on their prospects. How about their management team? Are there any shakeups or shifts in strategy we should be aware of?
Well, the earnings call was led by Mr. Bhaskar,
Yeah.
who's been at the helm for quite a while.
Right.
He seems to be a steady hand guiding them through this period of rapid growth and expansion. Their strategy seems clear: capitalize on their first mover advantage in the Indian dielectric film market while simultaneously building a global presence.
Sounds like they're trying to pull off a delicate balancing act.
Speaking of balance, let's circle back to those margins. How are those looking?
This is where that product mix we talked about earlier comes back into play.
Okay.
Their dielectric film segment enjoys juicy margins,
Juicy.
exceeding 40%, according to Mr. Bhaskar himself.
Wow.
But their co-extruded sheets and films business operates with thinner margins,
Okay.
in the 5% to 6% range.
So it's a classic trade-off between high margin specialty and high volume but lower margin business.
Precisely. It will be fascinating to see how this dynamic evolves as they crank up production on that new dielectric film line. Will they be able to maintain those premium margins as they scale up and potentially face even tougher competition? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seems like XPro is playing a strategic game of chess, carefully maneuvering their pieces on the global board, but with so many moving parts, it's hard to predict the end game.
Yeah. It certainly is a complex game they're playing,
It is.
but that complexity is precisely what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Right.
So let's shift our focus to the investor's perspective.
Okay.
If I'm listening to this, what are the key takeaways I should be jotting down about XPro?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Mm.
What makes this company tick, and is it worth my investment?
Well, one of the first things that jumps out is their dominance
Okay.
in the Indian dielectric film market. Remember, they're the pioneers,
This was
the
movers.
first to stake their claim.
Yeah.
And they haven't just rested on their laurels.
Right.
They're actively growing their capacity hungry to gobble up even more market share,
More.
both at home and abroad.
They definitely seem to have a healthy appetite for growth. That new production line in the UAE isn't exactly a small undertaking.
It speaks volumes about their ambition.
Yeah.
Are not just content with being a big fish in the Indian pond. They want to swim with the sharks on the global stage. And they're not just aiming for participation trophies.
Right.
They're going head-to-head with established giants in mature markets.
That's a bold move, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But do they have the chops to back it up?
Their track record suggests they might just pull it off.
Right.
They've already earned a reputation for quality and innovation,
Right.
even in notoriously demanding markets like Japan, Korea, and Europe.
So they've got the street cred, But I keep coming back to this balancing act they're pulling off.
Yeah.
Serving a booming domestic market while also chasing global dreams.
Yeah.
How do they manage that tension?
It's a tightrope walk, no doubt.
Right.
They mentioned having to cut back on exports last year to prioritize domestic demand,
Right.
which shows the limits of their current capacity.
Right.
This makes their expansion plans even more critical. They need that extra firepower to capitalize on both domestic and international opportunities.
So it's almost a race against time.
Yeah,
Expand fast enough to keep pace with demand, but also make sure they don't spread themselves too thin.
precisely. And expansion always comes with its own set of headaches.
Like what? Give us the investor's reality check.
Well, competition is always lurking,
Right.
both from local rivals trying to snatch a piece of the pie
Yeah.
and global players with deep pockets and established networks.
Of course.
They'll need to stay at the cutting edge, constantly innovating and differentiating themselves to maintain that competitive edge.
Especially if they want to command premium prices.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about their dielectric film segment having significantly higher margins
Yeah.
than their co-extruded sheets and films business.
Mhm.
Is that a key takeaway for investors?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That difference in profitability between those two segments underscores their strategic focus
Right.
on those high-value specialized products. It's a tale of two businesses within one company.
So they need to walk a fine line, balancing those two segments to squeeze out maximum profitability.
Exactly. And it will be fascinating to watch how they leverage their dielectric film expertise
Right.
to potentially develop new products and applications that tap into those booming sectors like
Yeah.
electric vehicles and alternative energy.
Now, those are markets with a serious growth trajectory. If they can capture even a sliver of those pies, it could be a game changer for them.
No doubt.
Well,
But let's not get carried away by the hype.
Right.
We need to keep those risk factors in mind. The cyclical nature of the plastics market, potential supply chain hiccups, and that constant pressure from competitors.
Right.
These are all factors investors need to weigh carefully.
Right. No investment comes with a money-back guarantee. It's about assessing those risks against the potential rewards.
And for XPro, those potential rewards look pretty enticing.
Right.
They're operating in a growth market.
Okay.
They've got a solid track record of innovation.
Yeah.
They're financially disciplined, and they have a clear vision for the future.
Good.
Plus, they've got the backing of the Birla family, one of the most prominent industrial houses in India.
That's a powerful endorsement.
Yeah.
It's like having a seal of approval from the titans of Indian industry.
It certainly adds to their credibility.
Yeah.
But ultimately, their success hinges on their ability to execute their strategy, navigate those challenges, and consistently deliver value to their customers.
It sounds like they're putting in the work. Their commitment to sustainability with that solar energy project for their Ranjangaon plant was particularly impressive. It's a savvy move, both for the planet and their bottom line.
Absolutely. It shows they're attuned to the growing investor focus on ESG factors, environmental, social, and governance.
Right.
They're not just chasing profits, they're striving to be responsible corporate citizens.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground performance, growth strategy, financials, and outlook. But I feel like we're dancing around the elephant in the room.
You mean China?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Manufacturing behemoth.
Right.
How does XPro factor China into their equation?
They definitely acknowledge China's dominance in the dielectric film market.
Right.
A significant portion of India's demand is currently met by imports, with Chinese companies playing a major role. So it's a force they can't ignore.
Do they see China as a threat or an opportunity? Or maybe a bit of both?
It seems like they're viewing it through both lenses.
Okay.
On the one hand, Chinese companies often compete aggressively on price, which can put pressure on margins.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's this global trend of diversifying supply chains away from China, the China plus one strategy.
So XPro could benefit from companies looking for alternative sources
Right.
for those crucial dielectric films, especially if they can maintain their focus on those high-quality specialized products that command premium prices.
Exactly. And they're well positioned to capitalize on that shift.
Okay.
They've invested in state-of-the-art equipment,
Good.
cultivated a team with deep expertise,
All right.
and built a reputation for quality and reliability.
Plus, they have that made in India advantage, which is increasingly appealing to companies looking to reduce their dependence on China.
It's definitely a factor to consider.
Right.
And it will be interesting to see how they leverage this advantage as they ramp up their global expansion efforts. They're playing a strategic game of chess, carefully positioning themselves to capture market share,
Yeah.
both domestically and internationally.
But like any chess game, there are a lot of moving pieces,
Yeah.
and the outcome is far from certain.
Indeed. We're only seeing a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
The market is constantly evolving.
Right.
New technologies are emerging and customer preferences are shifting.
That's true.
XPro will need to stay agile and adapt to those changes to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like watching a company in metamorphosis,
Yeah.
transforming from a primarily domestic player to one with global ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
But like any transformation, it takes time, and there are bound to be some growing pains along the way.
It's a fascinating journey to observe. And we'll be keeping a close eye on XPro as they navigate this exciting but challenging phase of their growth.
So we've talked China competition and those exciting growth opportunities in sectors like electric vehicles and alternative energy. But before we get too swept up in the future, let's remember that at its core, XPro is still a plastics processing company.
Right. They're not launching rockets or developing the next AI sensation.
Exactly. And that's important to remember. The plastics industry is often seen as mature, even cyclical.
Not always the most glamorous or exciting sector.
True. But it's an essential industry that underpins countless products we use every day.
Yeah.
From packaging to consumer goods to those high-tech electronics we were just discussing.
And within this vast landscape of plastics, XPro has carved out a niche with those specialized films that are critical for capacitors and other electronic components.
It's a reminder that even within mature industries, there are opportunities for innovation and differentiation.
And that sometimes the most unassuming products can play a crucial role in shaping our technological future. Think about it. Without those thin, flexible dielectric films, we wouldn't have the smartphones, laptops, or electric vehicles that are transforming our world.
It's a powerful reminder that innovation often occurs in unexpected places, and that sometimes the most valuable companies are the ones quietly working behind the scenes, enabling those groundbreaking technologies that capture our imaginations.
XPro India Limited might not be a household name yet, but they're a company worth watching. They're a reminder that even in a world obsessed with the next big thing, there's value in mastering the fundamentals and quietly building a strong, sustainable business.
It's a classic underdog story,
Yeah.
and we all love a good underdog.
Absolutely. And their journey is far from over. There are still chapters to be written, challenges to overcome, and triumphs to celebrate.
Okay.
So let's shift our focus now to the bigger picture,
All right.
taking all of this information and distilling it into some key investor takeaways.
All right, let's wrap this up with some actionable insights. What should investors be pondering as they consider XPro? What questions should they be asking themselves?
Is this a company that deserves a spot in my portfolio?
Yeah, that's the crucial question, right?
It all boils down to
Yes,
your
sir.
individual investment goals
Right.
and risk tolerance. But here are some key factors to consider when it comes to XPro.
Okay.
First, they have a strong foundation.
Okay. Strong foundation.
They're the dominant player in the Indian dielectric film market with a proven track record of growth and innovation.
Okay. Strong foundation check. What else should investors be weighing?
Their ambition.
Okay.
They're not content with just staying in their lane.
Right.
They're aggressively expanding capacity, eyeing global markets, and developing new products to tap into those mega trends we discussed, like electric vehicles and alternative energy.
They definitely seem to be thinking big. But big dreams don't always translate into big returns. What are the potential downsides investors need to be aware of?
That's where the risks part of the equation comes in. Competition is fierce.
Right.
Both from established global players and hungry local rivals.
Yeah.
They'll need to constantly innovate and stay ahead of the curve to maintain their edge.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of investment.
No.
Investors need to stay informed and watch how XPro adapts to those competitive pressures. What else?
The plastics industry, while essential, can be cyclical.
Right.
They're exposed to fluctuations in raw material prices, which can impact their profitability.
Of course.
And then there are those broader macroeconomic factors that are always swirling around.
Right.
Inflation, geopolitical uncertainty, potential supply chain disruptions. These are all things investors need to factor in.
Right. They're not operating in a vacuum. It sounds like investing in XPro comes with a certain level of risk, but also the potential for significant rewards.
Yeah.
A high-stakes game.
It is. But for investors who believe in their story, who see the potential of their technology, and who are comfortable with a calculated gamble, XPro might just be that hidden gem they're looking for.
So it's not for the faint of heart, but it could be a rewarding ride for those who do their homework.
Exactly. Remember, we're just offering insights based on the information available. The ultimate decision lies with each individual investor. Do your research understand